Working in Maryborough City Hall, whenever I feel I need a break, I like to walk down here to Queen's Park. This is a beautiful historic park beside the Mary River with many rich plantings, it's a diverse experience, but it's also these historical artifacts and pathways, including these three really interesting guns looking down to the Mary River. These interesting artifacts give an insight into two distinct historical periods. The late 19th century, when the Queensland Colonial government had its own Navy, and 1914, when the Commonwealth Department of Defence gifted obsolete weapons to communities across Australia for display in parks like Queen's Park here. Between separation from New South Wales in 1859 and Federation at the start of the 20th century, Queensland was really responsible for its own territorial defence. From the mid-1880s, this actually included a relatively small navy. All three of these guns were once part of that small force pulled together to protect our shores from the perceived threat of the Russians and others. The largest is the Armstrong 5-inch gun. This gun was manufactured in the Royal Gun Factory in 1888 and was sent to Cooktown in July 1889, where it was set up on Grassy Hill for the use of the Cooktown Naval Brigade. After the Cooktown Naval Brigade was disbanded in 1894, it was returned to Brisbane, apparently in very poor condition. The Maryborough Naval Brigade were interested in the gun and requested it the following year. However, for some time it stayed in Brisbane. There are a lot of really interesting markings and instructions on the gun, including a garter bearing the words "Honi soi qui mal y pense," which means "Shame be to him who thinks evil of it," a maxim that dates to King Edward III. Queensland was the only Australian colony to equip its naval forces with this type of gun, probably because it was actually not very effective. Queensland acquired 5 of them, and remarkably all 5 are still in existence. 2 have found their way to the HMAS Cerberus in Victoria, and the other 3 are in Cairns, Townsville, and this one here in Queen's Park. The next biggest gun is the Nordenfeldt 1.5-inch quick-firing gun, which was manufactured in 1884, the same year as the nearby Maryborough Courthouse was built, and mounted on the foredeck of the Queensland gunboat Hyundai. This breech-loading, single-barreled gun was in the Brisbane Naval Stores during the 1893 flood, but suffered little damage. By 1911, the obsolete gun was being used by the Naval Brigade in Maryborough for training. The smallest of the trio is the Nordenfeldt 1-inch 2-barrel gun, which was designed for torpedo boats. The naval vessel Midge had 2 of these guns, this one and another, which is now located in Alexander Park in Bundaberg. This is a cartridge gun. The ammunition cartridge was loaded at the top of the action block, and a firing mechanism was protected by a cover plate. This was actually a very common weapon for the different colonial naval forces, but it is now very rare. Our one and the Bundaberg one are the only ones remaining in Australia that I'm aware of. These 3 guns were all in the Maryborough Naval Brigade sheds by 1911, being used for training by the service personnel here. In 1914, they were part of a nationwide program of the Department of Defence to donate obsolete naval guns to councils to mount in public parks. Whilst other towns and cities received 1 or 2 obsolete weapons, Maryborough is unique in having 3 guns here situated beside the river. They were not overly used during their active military life, but for over a century these guns have stood as silent sentries, watching the tide come and go on the Mary River. They were a small but important part of our history and a beautiful addition that provides interest to Queen's Park.